So, I want to talk about why God is close to the brokenhearted, but in order to do that, we have to talk about altars. And I've mentioned them in other videos, explaining how altars are essentially a way to give dimensional or interdimensional access to other dimensions into this physical realm. Uh, an altar is a place of exchange. So this is actually applicable whether you're talking about a Christian altar, if you're talking about a witchcraft, occult, pagan, Wiccan altar. The altar is the place that you go, that you bring a gift or a sacrifice. You make your petition, you ask for whatever it is that you want, in the hopes that the deity, spirit, entity on the other side will grant you what you want. And so in Christianity, the altar for Christians is powered by Jesus's blood. That is why, one reason why Jesus triumphs in the spiritual realm, because Jesus is man and God. That's why he has to be both. And the blood that is spilled is essentially eternal. It is fixed in space and time. So the blood once shed is always being shed, has always been shed, because Jesus, once he's no longer mortal, um, is God, therefore outside of time. So the altar of a Christian is powered by Jesus's blood. Whereas if you are, let's say you are a witch, you might power your altar. Um, I've seen people take like crystals and put them in the moonlight and then offer those crystals to the being. So whichever entity or spirit that person might work with, a lot of witches, when they talk about it, they'll talk about like, oh, I felt chosen by, I want to say it's usually a goddess. Uh, but some entity that, as they offer the gift, they build a relationship with, so that when they start making requests and things, the entity, hopefully from their perspective, will grant these requests. And really what they're doing is we're creating that interdimensional access, right? Well, not always do we have time in life, in our personal experience of things, to set up that altar. So a lot of the things that Christians do, okay, I'm going to read off my notes. Um the spiritual exchanges that we're doing with God are really about creating this altar, this access point, this interdimensional access point. And so things that Christians do uh, are going to be along the lines of like, oh, we are a living sacrifice. So we may sacrifice our bodies. We don't eat certain things, we don't do certain things. That then the body becomes a living sacrifice. Worship, also a type of sacrifice. Prayers, a type of sacrifice. Let's see. I wrote, oh, the Bible's an altar. And that's one reason why it leads to the renewing of the mind, by the way. It says by the renewing, basically that reading the Bible renews your mind. That's why, because it it then makes your mind aligning with the dimension where God is. Let's see. The church is an altar, the body of Christ is an altar, marriage is an altar, praise and worship is an altar, singing is an altar, or contributes to creating this interdimensional access. Let's see. I put the cross, Jesus's blood, Jesus's name. That's super important. Words you speak, particularly if they're legitimately like just straight up Bible verses. That's why Jesus is the word, and the word was God, and the word was with God. A lot of that has to do with Jesus being an altar, an access point, allowing God and mankind to intersect. Um, I put sex within marriage, prayer over food and eating. So treating your body like a temple. Essentially, you are giving something up that matters to you. It is a sacrifice. And these daily sacrifices help power this altar. But let's say you've never been a Christian and you've not, maybe you haven't even, if you've created an altar, it's not to Yahweh, it's not to Jesus. Uh, Maybe it's to like another deity, like oh, what's her name? Hecate. I feel like a lot of witches like Hecate, or Lilith and those kind of goddesses, entities. Let's say you've spent your entire life making altars to other things. But then what? You're in trouble and you need help. Jesus is the name you can call on, or Yahweh is the name you can call on. Yeshua means God rescues. In the Bible, it talks about how God is close to the brokenhearted. And the reason why, in my opinion, that God is close to the brokenhearted is because he's saying you don't have to make an altar to get to me. Your broken heart has already created the preconditions. All you have to do is reach out. So a lot of Christianity is about that process of washing sin so that you're clean. Because when you're sinning, you're doing a lot of things that God doesn't really want to be close to, right? Fairly, depending particularly on what you're doing. But for someone who wants to be close to God, for someone who wants God's presence, uh, how do you make that happen? And I think that's why God is close to the brokenhearted, why he does not reject a contrite spirit. And I am going to talk about a dream I had. The Lord showed me in one of my dreams people that were in a lake and it was absolutely pitch black. So they were in the water, they were in the lake, and then also it was night and absolutely pitch black. And they were curled up in the fetal position and they were being attacked, like psychically or emotionally or something like that. So they're in the fetal position and they're being attacked. And the attack was trying to break them, trying to make them give up, trying to make them destroy themselves. But there was this light shining on their faces that they couldn't see. And so to me, that's what this is. He's coming close. All you have to do is reach out. The altar is created because of your broken heart. And all you have to do is reach out, because then you're offering that broken heart. Even if we don't recognize that that's what we're doing, we're offering it to God. And we're saying, God, please help me. And he's like, I absolutely am. I will. And because God's outside of time, that help can come in the past and in the present and in the future. So a lot of Christians don't realize it, but they are building an altar. They're an interdimensional access point for God to step into this world. That's why it's so important we're the hands and feet of Jesus, or that we're doing God's will. That's why it says, Jesus says, anyone who does God's will is my mother and, sister and brother, or something like that. So when you're brokenhearted and you reach out to the Lord, he's saying you don't have to build an altar. It's already created. All you have to do is reach out. Anyway, I hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.